Flins is finally here, so let's go over everything you need to know to build and play him and his teams right, and give an overall analysis of his current and potential future standing in the meta. But first, Genshin's anniversary is here, and with it, the top-up bonuses have been reset. So if you're looking to save money on your Genesis Crystal or Welkin Moon top-ups, you'll want to check out today's sponsor, LD Shop. LD Shop is a safe and reliable site that allows you to top up at discounted rates compared to the in-game prices. Topping up is safe and easy, as all you need to provide is your server and in-game user ID number. And as you can see, I just put this information in, select the $50 top-up option, which I'm saving over $10 by purchasing through LD Shop, so that's over a 20% discount compared to the in-game price. And within seconds, I get the Genesis Crystals and still got my first-time bio bonus crystals, just like if I had purchased in-game. And so if you register using my link, you'll get an extra 15% off on top of the regular discount. You'll find my link in the description and pinned comment. Thank you, LD Shop. Now back to the video. Alright, so Flins has rather simple gameplay that you're probably familiar with by now. Just swap through your supports before going to Flins, cast the skill twice, do the mini burst, normal attack until skill is off cooldown, then cast it and the mini burst again, rinse and repeat. But there is a unique thing that's been getting a lot of attention, which is actually using the 80 karst burst. The idea here is that by building high energy recharge, you can use it and the 2 mini bursts for 3 total bursts every 3 rotations. So first rotation 3 bursts, second and third 2 bursts, then fourth rotation 3 bursts again. But it requires very high energy recharge to do this. On his weapon or Kitang Crossbear, it's between 150 to 160, using Favonius it's 140 to 150, and on anything else between 180 to 190. That's an amount of ER you'd have to actively try to reach via high substats and an ER weapon or sands. So while it results in more damage in rotations where you do get the 3 bursts, you'll be doing less in the other rotations, and it's usually a DPS loss overall over just playing with 2 bursts. Thus, I would not advise actively trying to build around this, unless you're already using a weapon where you wouldn't need too much extra ER to do so, such as Engulfing Lightning. So instead, just treat Flint's big burst as something you can do if you ever happen to start off his build time with full energy, such as in the first rotation of an Abyss Chamber. That said, let's go over Flint's teams. As we know, he's a burst-reliant lunar-charged DPS, so you need a second Electro for energy and a Hydra applicator for the reaction. Nepha is naturally the best second Electro. She provides excellent battery, provides good buffs for Flins while covering the sustain slot via her shield, and does some of the highest sub-DPS damage in the entire game. I know is the best Hydra because she has short cooldowns to work with Flint's ideal 16-second rotations, and she provides decent buffs with her C1 and C6, though she'll be the best even without the C6. And then in the last slot, the current best option is Sucrose. As with 4-piece VV and her EM buffs, she's providing good buffs to both Flins and Nepha at the same time. And Flins gets full uptime and all of the buffs in most scenarios. Sucrose also builds pure elemental mastery, which helps provide a good amount of lunar damage bonus buff from Not Cry Resonance. So that's Flint's current best team, and if you have a Nepha, there's really not much reason to not be using this team for him. Ino and Sucrose are both on his banner and don't need high constellations to be optimal, plus neither of them are exactly high-in-demand supports for other teams. But say for example, you're planning to pull Nefer and use Ino with her instead, you'll want to replace her with a Hydra that can do short rotations, in which case, the best option right now is Farina. Her skill has a 20-second cooldown, but it lasts 30 seconds, so you can just cast it every other rotation and still be fine. And you actually just won't use Farina's burst here since there's no healer for it anyway, plus her damage bonus buff is wasted on Flins and Nepha. C6 Candace is the next best option. Her normal attack buffing is mostly useless here, but during pre-release, Candace was believed to be a close side grade to Ino due to building HP on her contributing to Not Cry Resonance, but that doesn't actually apply here. Not Cry Resonance only uses the stats of the last non-Not Cry character to cast their skill, which is going to be Sucrose here. So all Candace is doing is applying Hydra while allowing short rotations, but that's still enough to make her the best option if not using Ino or Farina. But what if instead of replacing Ino, it's a Nepha you need to substitute for? One of the biggest issues with replacing a Nepha is that she was the sustain slot, so unless you are comfortable playing without sustain, you also have to take a big hit by replacing Sucrose. But with Flins, it's not too unreasonable to play without sustain, because he's in an iframe during his burst, and the rest of the time he's just performing weak normal attacks, with very little loss by dodging during that time. The best Electro alternatives to a Nepha are Auroran, Sara, and Kuki. Auroran won't help much with Squirrel, so I recommend putting him on Noblesse instead. But even without Squirrel, he does decent sub-DPS damage, is a great battery for Flins, and has a good buff at C6 with 30 attack percent. Auroran's burst is also great at distracting enemies, making them easier to avoid getting hit by, and thus making playing without sustain much easier. You can do this, he's only about 11% less team DPS than a Nepha, but keep in mind he can't taunt Barsis. If you do need a sustain, it will be either Lanyan or Bennett, but now at this point it is far worse than playing Ineffa plus Sucrose, but still plenty good enough until you do get Ineffa. But if you wanted to use a sustain, I find that using Sara plus Bennett actually calcs the highest. Sara is the best of these Electros when it comes to buffing Flins. She provides him with attack and crit damage. In rotations with Sara bursts, Flins is able to get her buff on both of his mini bursts, though you can't burst with her every rotation due to the cooldown, so in rotations without it, only one Flins burst will have it. But even still, this is the strongest option if you wanted an alternative to Ineffa while also having sustain. Just keep in mind Sara is the worst battery out of all the options, so you'll need more energy recharge with her. And for Kuki, she is the sustain, so you can still use Sucrose, but it's just not as good as using Auroran plus Lanyan or Sara plus Bennett, so I don't recommend it. One more Electro I looked into but can't recommend is Electro Traveler. My hypothesis with Traveler was, with how much battery they provide, they should allow Flins to do his triple burst every 2 rotations with much less energy recharge than he'd normally need for it. Unfortunately, it did not work the way I expected, and Flins was just not getting anywhere near full energy for the big burst after the first rotation, not even on the 4th rotation, so don't waste your time with Electro Traveler, they still suck. Now another thing you can do with Flins teams that's worth mentioning is pair him with Llama and play Hyper Bloom in a team of Flins, Ineffa, Llama, Yelan. Normally Xingqiu is the best Hydro for Hyper Bloom, but forcing a 21-second rotation with Flins is really bad, so we use Yelan instead. However, this is a lot weaker than his pure lunar-charged teams, and will just be within the same general power level as other Llama Hyper Bloom teams, so there's no real reason to use this unless you really need Bloom or Dendro for a specific scenario. And that's pretty much all you need to know for Flins teams, so let's now refresh on how to build Flins. For his leveling priority, you first want to get his burst to 90, as this is where the majority of his damage comes from. The second highest portion of his damage comes from the lunar-charged reaction itself, and that damage scales highly with your character level, so you want to get Flins to level 90. After that, you can level his skill, as this is where his infused normal attacks scale, but they are still a very small portion of his damage, so you'll be fine leaving them at like level 6 if you want to save on resin. For Flint's weapons, the only ones I calced doing the big burst at all are Favonius and Engulfing Lightning, since it was a DPS loss for everything else. But for Favonius, I have him doing it every 3 rotations, and Engulfing Lightning every 2 rotations, as he should be able to do it with around 220% ER, which is achievable since this weapon gives you 85 by itself. Factoring this in actually makes Engulfing Lightning his 3rd highest damage weapon, behind Blood-Soaked Ruins and Staff of Starlit Sands. Aside from these 3, good options would just be generally good stats, things like Jade Spear or Fractured Halo, so if you have Halo, it should be on Ineffa. Vortex Vanquisher is a surprisingly viable option since we actually have a shield from Ineffa to max out the passive, and the weapon makes Ineffa's shield more durable if you value that. For 4-star weapons, if you have Deathmatch or Ballad at R5, you should be using them, otherwise just use the craftable Prospector Shovel. For Flint's artifacts, the not quite DPS set Natsu is eons ahead of everything else, so please just use it. Even a mediocre Natsu set is going to be better than good sets of the other options. Until you get your hands on a full Natsu set, you can use Gilded Dreams or 2-piece options, but you absolutely want to switch to Natsu once you get a usable set. Main stats very simple, Attack Sands and Goblet and Crit Circlet. If you have a really good Attack Circlet, you can use it, and if you have a good EM Goblet or Sands but don't have Attack yet, you can use the EM piece until you do get Attack. Substats focus on Crit with Attack as a secondary priority, but first make sure you reach enough energy recharge for your team. And for those energy requirements, it's going to depend on several factors, but to give a general range, if doing 2 mini bursts and are using his weapon or Kitane, you shouldn't need more than 100 to 110, and between 110 to 120% if C1. With other weapons, aim for between 110 to 130, or between 120 to 140 if C1. The low end of these ranges is with high energy generation second Electros like Ineffa, Fischl, or Auroran, and the high end with low generation options like Sara. Finally, vertical investment. Flins has extremely high vertical scaling. His damage is basically 3 times higher from C0 to C6. He has one of the strongest C1s in the entire game, 30% increase over C0. His vertical investment priority should be getting Ineffa, then his C1, then his weapon, and then this is a fantastic stopping point, but C2 and C3 are also very strong and make great stopping points if you desire even more power. I wouldn't go past this unless you intend to go all the way to C6, and once you are at C6, at that point Ineffa's weapon and Constellations become the next priority if you want to go even farther beyond. And that's everything, so what's the verdict on Flins at this place in the meta? Currently, Flint's strongest team calcs at around 149,000 DPS give or take, which is basically the exact same as Veressa, whom everyone would agree before Flins she was the third best DPS by a good margin. An argument you can make in favor of Flins here is that Veressa uses two 4-star supports that really want to be C6, Eon-san more so than Chevres, while on Flins teams there's no real big difference between C0 and C6 Sucrose. The difference between C1 and C6 Ino isn't that big either, so the argument could be made that Flins has an overall more accessible team. Another factor worth considering is Flins has stronger Constellations than Veressa, especially at the C1 level, since Veressa's is only an 11% increase compared to his insane 30%. So overall, I think it's pretty fair to say Flins is the current third strongest DPS, likely to be pushed out to number 4 when Nefer is out. But when it comes to Flins versus Veressa, as I've said before, even though they are both Electro DPS, it's not that important which one is better. Electro is an extremely versatile element. These two use completely different teams from each other with no supports in common at all, so they aren't competing with each other for anything on your account to begin with. You can just play both. Also, one more thing worth keeping in mind is, as I'm sure you've heard, Flins has good room for future improvements to his team. Nefer isn't going anywhere, and I have a hard time imagining a better option than Sucrose, though it's certainly not impossible, but making a better Hydro than Ino would be very easy. Just make one that works in Flins' ideal rotation time, so either doing actual sub-DPS damage unlike Ino, or having more buffing than her, or both. Should such a character like that ever come out, aka probably Columbina, he could very possibly reach Skark's current power level, if not surpass it. But I'm curious to know your thoughts, let me know in the comments. Also feel free to join my Discord where you can communicate with me and my community directly, and if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, goodbye.